Hey, this is Melissa Wright, and I wanted to create this video to help introduce you to human design. I know that um, there's a ton of information about human design out there now, and a lot of it can feel really overwhelming and confusing, and there's a lot of language that's used in human design that is hard to understand. So I'm really hoping that in this video, I can simplify it for you, help you to figure out exactly where to start in learning about your human design and how to use it in your life. So I'm going to do my best to keep this short and only stick to the information that's going to help you get started. So how can human design help you? It can help by helping you to reduce frustration, bitterness, and anger. It can help you to find success, satisfaction, purpose, and happiness. It can help you to make better decisions based on your unique design by helping you to understand your body's unique way of sending you messages so that you're going to know what you should say yes to and what to say no to. And really, most importantly, it's going to help you learn how to trust yourself. Okay, so what do you need in order to start digging into your human design? The website that I highly recommend is mybodygraph.com. There's a ton of information you can get from this site about your unique design for free. In order to get your chart, you're going to need to know your date of birth, your time of birth, and your place of birth. Now, ideally, you know or can find out your exact time. So whether you can pull out your birth certificate or ask a parent, if you can put in your exact time, it can make a difference in your chart. So your chart can change dramatically even if you're off by 1 minute. If you don't and can't find out your exact time, but you know kind of the ballpark, like you were born in the morning or you're born in the evening or in the middle of the night, the next best thing without knowing your exact time is to get as close as you can and make your best guess. And if you have absolutely no idea what time you're born, it's okay. You can still start to learn your human design and you can put in your information that you do know. I would recommend starting with noon for the first chart you create. And then as you have more time, you can create multiple charts with different times throughout the day you were born and see as you start to understand more what changes occur throughout the day. And then you can maybe make decisions about what feels best. And also knowing that you're going to take the information with that uncertainty, kind of with a grain of salt, that there could be some things that would be different. Hopefully that makes sense. But so go ahead and pause this now if you haven't already pulled up your chart. Go to mybodygraph.com, put in your birth information. It's going to help you if you can go along the rest of this with having your chart and seeing what your chart looks like. All right, so chart basics. When you go to My Body Graph, you put in your information, you are going to see a chart that looks something like the one you see on this screen. So there are 9 centers in your human design. There's the black side that you see on the right, that it gets calculated at the time that you were born. The red side that's on the left is your design, and that is calculated 88 days before you're born. And within each of the centers, there are numbers. Those are the gates of that center. If and the lines that go in between the centers are called the channels. And we're going to go deeper into each of those and what they mean. So first we'll talk about the 9 centers. So you may be familiar with the 7 centers or chakras in the chakra system. And you will see that those 7 that people refer to when they talk about chakras are here, and there are 2 additional ones. So starting from the top, we've got the head. The ajna is actually the Sanskrit word for third eye. So if you're familiar with third eye, it's the same kind of concept here. Then we go down to the throat. The G center is below the throat. This is one of the new ones. And then we continue down to the heart, which is the small red triangle in this graph, in this design chart. And then the solar plexus is the big white one to the right side of the red one. Then we come over to the left, the brown one is the spleen. The one in the spleen is another one of the additional ones on top of the 7 chakras. And then in the center, that white square in the center is the sacral center, and the bottom brown one is the root. So we will go quickly into each of those in a little bit. Okay, so like I said, there's the black side, which is your personality that gets calculated at the time that you were born. And this is who you think you are. Okay, so this is where your personality crystal comes in. It's they say that it's located in your head ajna. And so you will see for each of the black numbers listed here, and you can see the little symbols correspond with the different planets. So this gets calculated based on the positioning of everything at that time that you were born. And you will see the corresponding gate for the number that you see in each of those squares is activated. When it's activated, if it's from the black side, the line that goes up to that center and up to that gate will be black. And you'll see the gray circle around that number within that center. So this, in this example that you see on the screen, this is the spleen center. So number 50 comes from the Uranus on the black side. So you'll see the 50.2. Now the numbers in each of those squares that come after the decimal, that references the line of the hexagram. So there are 6 lines in that calculate your human design. And it's definitely not important for us to dig into the depth of what each of the lines mean at this point. There is a different flavor based on the line that activates your gate. And even understanding what each of the gates mean right now, it's definitely not the best place to start with human design. So there's a ton of information here. And when you're ready, you'll know, and you'll feel inspired to dig deeper into each of those gates. And hopefully I can help you to dig into that when the time is right. But for now, like, I just want you to know that this is how your chart gets calculated. You have the black gates, and then the red side from the left side of your chart, that is your design, which gets calculated, like I said, 88 days before you were born. And each of the numbers that you see on that left side, you will see the red lines that activate the gate on your chart. So it's possible, as you can see with the 18, which comes from the Pluto, that gate is activated both on the personality side at the time you're born and the design side, the red side from 88 days before. One last thing that I'll say too about the red side, this is your design. So these are traits that you would have that you may be unconscious to. Okay, so traits are themes of that energy center, which we're going to go a little bit deeper into the energy centers here next. But these would be things that other people would likely easily see in you, but things that you would have a hard time seeing in yourself potentially. And so the personality side, this is who you think you are. This comes from the mind, right? This is your mind trying to steer you in the right direction. The design side is really who you really are at your core, even if you're not consciously aware of it. So you can't help but live out your design, even if you're not consciously aware of it, and even if it might not agree with what your mind thinks. And this will make more sense as you continue to dig deeper too. Okay, so when you have gates that are active in the 2 centers on either side of the line in between, then that activates the channel. When you have an active channel in your chart, like you can see in this example, the 40 in the red triangle and the 37 in the brown triangle, both of those are active. They're black on this one, so they came from this person's personality side at the time they were born, and it has activated this whole channel. So because both gates on either side of that channel are active, that actually gives this person definition in both of those centers. Okay, so a channel refers to a strength that you have. So when you have both sides of the line in between two centers, those two centers are going to become defined in your chart, and it's going to give you that strength. So as you get deeper into understanding your human design, one of the things that you can learn about and read about is your channels, your strengths, and start to understand them. And again, the black and red can become important here. So if you have a black channel, it's likely something that you see in yourself that you're conscious to. If in your chart you have a red channel, this would be a strength that you have that you may have a hard time seeing in yourself, but other people would easily see. Okay, so when you have a gate that's active in a center, but you only have one half of the line that's activated. So from the brown circle, you can see the 55 and 30. Each of those gates is active from with the black line, but the other end of those channels, the 39 and 41, are white. So those are not activated. When you have a channel that only half is filled in, it's called a hanging gate. And this tends to be something that drives when you feel a connection or attraction to other people. So when you're in the aura or energy of other people who have the 39 or 41, especially if they're missing the 55 and 30, you would likely feel an attraction to them. And that's called an electromagnetic connection when that happens, when another person fills in half of your empty channel and you fill in half of theirs. So I kind of like, I always think about the Jerry Maguire movie where like he says, you complete me. People who you are in a romantic relationship with, I would suspect that you have several electromagnetic channels with that other person. I've seen it where there's people who are married and very happy and been married for a long time, and they actually don't have any electromagnetic. So it's not like a rule where it always works this way, but I would suspect that the person that you're married to, you would have these electromagnetic connections with. Okay, so when we talk about your centers, your center will either be defined or undefined. Okay, so defined centers, again, they become defined when the channel is activated because both gates on either side of that channel are activated in your chart. So in your chart, when you'll see the 9 centers and you'll see what it looks like for you, it's either going to be white, which means it's undefined, or it's going to be colored, which means it's defined. When you have a defined center, what that means is that you have consistent and reliable access to the energy of that center. And each center has a theme, and we'll talk about that here in a minute too. So when you have a gate within the center that's activated, then that theme of that gate is going to contribute to how you handle and process the energy, whether it's defined or undefined. This is true. Okay, so undefined, what that means is that you don't have consistent access to the energy or of that center. Now, it doesn't mean that you're broken or anything needs to be fixed. But what it does mean is that you are more vulnerable to being influenced by other people or outside circumstances, conditioning, or what they refer to in human design as the not self. So before you become aware, and this is why it's so important to learn about your human design, because you can learn about the centers that you have that are undefined, where you are vulnerable to be conditioned or operate from your not self, like they talk about in human design. And like I said, it's not that it's broken. A lot of times I think when we have undefined centers, these are the things that we see that are lacking in ourselves, like those things that are our weaknesses, or we see those qualities in other people and we wish we had them. But once you become aware and you learn to follow your strategy and authority, and you learn to recognize when you're operating from conditioning and not self things because of your openness, then these open centers bring in such amazing opportunity for learning and for wisdom. Okay, so when you have it undefined, you are going to pick up the energy of other people, especially if they have definition. And we tend to amplify that energy when we have openness of other people that have that definition. And then it kind of reflects it back to them. Now, another distinction that you have in your chart as well, you can have an undefined center that has none of the gates that are activated. So in this example, and the one you see on the screen, the solar plexus, which is the big white triangle all the way to the right, that center, you will notice, doesn't have any of the lines up to it that have been colored. All of them are white. None of the numbers or gates inside of that center are circled or gray with the gray circle around it. So in this chart, this is a completely open center. So it's undefined. So anything that applies to undefined center also applies when it's completely open. But this can kind of bring in, especially in the beginning, an additional challenge when you have an completely open center, because you don't have the definition or the activation of a gate that gives you the theme of how to process the energy that you're absorbing from other people. So you don't really have a frame of reference for how to process that energy when you have a completely open center. And especially before you become aware of your design and that you have this completely open center, it can feel really challenging, and even more challenging than just having an undefined center. But on the other end of that, it's also a greater opportunity for even increased wisdom and knowledge, and using what you are absorbing from other people, where you're more open as well to how you see and understand and process that energy. And you're not coming from a fixed place. So there's a great opportunity for wisdom here as well. So if you have a completely open center in your chart, do not worry. There are advantages um, to any of these. So it's not like it's good or bad to have defined or undefined or even completely open. So if you find yourself wanting to label them as good or bad, or if you're questioning, like, is it good to have a defined root center or is it bad? It's not about it being good or bad. So don't let your mind try to trick you into trying to judge these as good or bad. Each of them, whether defined or undefined or even completely open, they have their advantages and they have their challenges. So once you understand what the advantages are and what the challenges are, and you really learn to apply your strategy and authority, which we're going to talk about here soon, then you have the opportunity to use your human design and your understanding of your human design to live the way that you are meant to live, to fulfill your purpose and your passion, and to really know exactly how to interact with other people and how to really understand yourself. Okay, so I'm going to touch really briefly. There's a ton of information here in these centers. And while I want to give you enough information to understand and get started with your human design, I definitely do not want to overwhelm you. So I'm just going to talk briefly about the 9 centers, what kind of center they are, and kind of the main theme. And as you listen to this, pay attention to your chart if you have it, and which ones that you have that are defined or undefined. Okay, so first I want to talk about the 2 pressure centers. So there are 2 pressure centers: the head, which is the triangle all the way at the top, and the root, which is the square all the way at the bottom. So the head comes with the pressure to know. So that's mental pressure, inspiration, questions, doubts, confusions. If you have this undefined, a question you can ask yourself to determine if you're operating from your not self or from conditioning is, am I trying to answer everybody else's questions? And I suspect if you have this undefined, then that question probably resonates and makes sense to you. The root center is the pressure to do. Okay, so this is where motivation and drive, it's that physical adrenalized pressure. This is where stress comes. The not self theme here, if you have this one undefined, is am I in a hurry to get things done so I can be free of the pressure? Next, I want to talk about the 3 awareness centers. Okay, so the ajna, which is the triangle below the head, is mental consciousness. So conceptualization, interpreting, answers are as opinions, concepts, theories. Okay, so if you have that, then you will have strength in conceptualizing and having answers and coming up with concepts and theories. If you have this open, the not self theme is, am I trying to convince everyone that I'm certain? The next awareness center is the spleen, which is the brown triangle on the left side of the chart. And this has to do with health and well-being. So this is where your body consciousness comes in, intuition, spontaneity, immune system, values. Um, so this, the not self theme, if you have this one undefined, is am I holding on to what isn't good for me? And then we come to the solar plexus, which on this chart is white. It's the big triangle on the right side, just below the red triangle. And this has to do with emotional and social awareness. So the themes here are passion and desire, feelings, mood, sensitivity, spiritual consciousness. And if you have this one undefined, then the not self question is, am I avoiding confrontation and truth? Okay, then within the centers, there are 4 centers that are motors. So these are energy centers. And you'll notice here that even though the root center we talked about as being a pressure center, the root center is also considered a motor. So the root center is listed here again. And the solar plexus, which was on the previous slide as an awareness center, is also a motor center as well. It's an energy center. And you'll see later why it's important for me to identify these 4 motors. But for now, we have the heart, which is one we haven't talked about yet. That's the red triangle. This is your source of willpower. So only about 30% of the population has this one defined. 70%, or most of us, do not have this defined. And this is where your ego is, your self-esteem, your sense of worth comes in. So people who have this defined don't have as much of a challenge with maybe charging in their business or having that self-esteem or having that willpower. But most of us, I definitely have this one open, do not have consistent access to that. So the not self theme is, do I think I have something to prove? The solar plexus we talked about before, and the not self theme here is still the same. But this is an energy center because emotions can definitely drive you, right? Like a lot of us, I actually don't have this one defined, but people who have the solar plexus defined, and it's about 51% of the population, um, you know, there's a lot of energy that can come from intense emotions. Then there's the sacral center. The sacral center is definitely an important center in human design. This is the life force energy, and about 70% of the population does have this one defined. And what that means is they have that vital energy. They're meant to be the doers. This is also has to do with power, fertility, availability, respondability, which we'll talk about as we go a little bit further into authority. So being able to respond to opportunities that come up, and also has to do with sexuality. So if you do not have this one defined, if you have this one undefined, the not self question is, do I know when enough is enough? And again, like I said, the root center is here. I'm not going to go into all that. It's still the same. It's just that pressure to do that motivation, that drive. That's definitely a big source of energy for people that have consistent access to this. Okay, and then there is the manifestation center, which is the throat. So all of the energy in the chart is going to be moving towards the throat. So whether it's coming from the head or the ajna, it's going to move down towards the throat. And whether it's coming from the root or anything below, all of the energy is going to flow towards the throat. Okay, so just know that the energy is always going towards the throat. And this is where communication, manifestation, metamorphosis, transformation comes in. Okay, so this is how all of the energy comes into manifestation, into physicality, into something that's communicated or spoken. And then not self-theme, if you have this one undefined, is am I trying to attract attention? And then the last center is the G center, which is the identity center. So this is where the magnetic monopole, and this is definitely one of those human design words that can be a little out there at first. But so the magnetic monopole, we have the personality side, the black side, and we have the red side, that's the design. The magnetic monopole is going to be what brings those two sides together and integrates them and creates who you are based on both sides of your design. And it's also going to be what attracts everything. It's going to be what attracts the right opportunities, the right people, the right circumstances into your life. This is where love, identity, direction, and that connection to higher self comes in within the G center. Now, not having a G center defined, so the not self question here is, am I looking for love and direction? So it doesn't mean that if you don't have this, that you don't know who you are and that you don't have love. All of us have that inner love, that inner connection, and that direction. It just means that you're not necessarily going to have consistent access to it. And it means that you're going to really want to be careful about who you're surrounding yourself with and when you're allowing conditioning from people that aren't correct from you to kind of steer that direction or to cause you to not follow your strategy and authority because you're looking for love and direction and identity and people that are not correct from you and environments that are not correct for you. So one thing that I want to mention too, a big analogy that they use in human design. So the personality side, the black side, there's a personality crystal that they talk about, which I mentioned before. They say is located in the head center. And that's who you think you are. And the mind tends to want to be the driver of the show, right? It wants to find all the reasons and logic and all of those things that make sense and control what you're doing and why you're doing it. But your personality crystal is not actually designed to drive you. You cannot make correct decisions from that mind. The mind has a great value. So it helps you to come up with ideas and come up with questions and those thoughts and all of that. And there's a value in what the mind provides, but the mind will not give you the correct answers and solutions. It just can't do it. But it wants to have that control. So really becoming aware of that is really one of the most valuable things about human design. So they use an analogy of a car. So the red side, which is your design, they say that that's like the vehicle that is driving. So your design, if we use the analogy of a car, like maybe that's a limo, or maybe that's a Jeep, or maybe that's a sports car, and each of those styles, those types, has its own advantages and disadvantages. And you can't get a VW Bug to drive the same way as a sports car. And it's not that a sports car is, definitely better or more valuable. Well, I mean, money wise, but they're still vehicles that have their own unique advantages and styles. And, maybe one's faster, or maybe one's more comfortable, or maybe one's more affordable. So they all have their own unique characteristics and advantages and disadvantages. But you can't make a VW Bug drive the same way as, uh, a souped up Mustang. And just allowing each of those cars to be what they are and accepting them as they are, and not trying to make the VW Bug become a Mustang as part of what understanding human design is. Okay, so your red side is your vehicle, your type of car that you were born as, that you are meant to be. And the black side is actually the passenger of that vehicle. So it's meant to just be in the back seat and just notice and become aware and experience the ride, experience what's going by in the window, feeling the temperature of the inside of the car, feeling the bumps as you ride over them, and just noticing. And so the goal with human design is to learn to have your mind take that back seat and just enjoy the ride and notice what it notices, and not try to steer the car. And then the magnetic monopole, that G center, that is the driver of the car. Okay, so that is who you are. It's going to bring all of the things together, and it knows instinctually, intuitively, because it has that connection with that higher self. So learning to allow yourself to connect with your identity, your direction, your higher self, and letting that be the driver of the car, and not needing to understand it, but just becoming that passenger in the vehicle. So that's the whole goal here. Hopefully that made sense. But okay, so I just threw a ton of information at you, but here's really where you want to start when you come into mybodygraph.com. Whether you're looking at this out on your computer or your phone, it might look a little bit different, but you're looking for the information hub, and you're going to go in the first section, the introduction to strategy and authority. So everything you see here on this introduction tab is what you have access to for the free account. And this is definitely enough to start with. So you're going to go click on your strategy and authority. It is a little bit long. One thing I'll tell you too, there are icons with things that have like a book next to it. Those are things you can read, and there are icons that have a little triangle, like a play triangle. And those are actually audio clips from Ra Uru, who's the creator of the human design system. So you can listen to him and things in his own words and get some of the deeper information. Personally, I have a hard time listening to those recordings. I'd rather read it. I'm a little bit too impatient to hear all of that play out, and I'd rather just read it. But for you, that may not be the case. So, try them both out, see what feels better and more supportive to you. And, but definitely read through what is listed there as your strategy and authority. So human design, like I said, is super complex. There's so much information here. It's all really helpful. And as people who share human design get deeper and deeper into understanding human design and all the complexities, it's really challenging to not want to just throw all of it at people. And I definitely find myself, even though I'm only about 3 years into understanding human design personally, there's so much information here that I want you to get and understand, because it's been so life-changing for me. And your mind is going to want you to continue to dig deeper, and it's going to want to get distracted in some of the details that are going to prevent you from really learning how to live your human design. And so I definitely want to encourage you to just really bring your focus here to strategy and authority and start to experiment for yourself. So there's so much complexity here, and everyone that shares human design is going to kind of taint what they're sharing based on their own understanding and experience. But really, here, this is an invitation for you to start to experiment with your design, and learning your strategy and authority is going to give you the information you need to know what to say yes and no to know how to listen to your body. It all lies here in that strategy and authority. Okay, so I'm going to briefly touch on the 4 types that will determine your strategy. Okay, so, and this has to do with what's defined or undefined in your chart. So, and it's a hierarchy. So first, if you have the sacral center defined, everyone that has it defined is a generator. And it's 70% of the population have that sacral center defined and are generators. Now, your chart may say that you're a manifesting generator, but just know for these purposes, manifesting generator and generators, they're both generators. And much of what's true, especially when it comes to following your strategy, is the same whether you're a classic generator or you're a manifesting generator. And it's about a 50-50 split. About 35% of the population are generators and 35% of the population are manifesting generators. And basically, becoming a manifesting generator has to do with whether or not your throat is activated, and if it's activated to one of those 4 energy centers that we talked about before. But again, like if you have that sacral center, even if you have the throat that's attached to one of the motors, which is what makes a manifester, then you are a generator. Okay, so manifestors. Manifestors are, actually, let me back up 1 second. So generators, you have that sacral center defined. So they also refer to generators as the builders because you have that consistent access to that life force energy. Okay, so you are going to have consistent access to energy as long as you're doing the things that are correct from you, as long as you're using your authority. The strategy here is to wait to respond. So waiting to respond doesn't mean that you sit there and you do nothing until something just magically happens into your life. You still go about doing those things that, especially things that bring you that sense of satisfaction, because the signature for a generator is satisfaction. So if your general emotion that you're feeling is satisfaction, then you know that even without understanding human design in the system, that you have intuitively started to follow your strategy and authority. And when you're feeling satisfaction, you know that you are operating the way that you're designed to operate. When you are feeling frustration, that is your key that you haven't been living correctly for you, and you've allowed that conditioning to force you to operate from the not self. Okay, so those are the 2 things you're going to look for as a generator. You're going to look for satisfaction and you're going to look for frustration. And that's going to tell you whether you've been doing things that are correct for you, or if you've been taking on things that were not correct for you because you didn't listen to your authority. Okay, and we're going to talk about authority too, so don't worry, we're going to touch that too. But okay, so the next type is manifestors. Manifestors are also known as the initiators. So a manifestor is someone who does not have that sacral center defined, but they do have the throat defined. And also there's a channel between the throat and one of those 4 energy centers. So that was the heart, that was the solar plexus, that was the root, and that was the, how come I can't think of the other one? Actually, I know I can't think of the other one because the other motor is the sacral, and that one actually doesn't apply to manifestors because, again, if you have that sacral center, then you're a generator, not a manifestor. So a manifestor would have the throat connected to the heart, the solar plexus, or the roots. Now, obviously, there's no line that goes directly from the throat to the root center. It would have to go through either like the spleen or down through the heart and the what you. So if you know if it's connected to the heart and the solar plexus down to the root, then that's also another energy center. But okay, so the next type is the projector. Oh, let me sorry, let me back up. So manifestors again. Manifestors, there's about 9% of the population who are manifestors, and they are the only type who is able to initiate things, to kind of make things happen. And their strategy is to inform. So manifestors have the ability to move really quickly, and once they get an idea that they're really inspired about, that their authority has told them is correct for them, they easily have success. And they move really fast. And the challenge here is that they move so fast that they can sometimes come across as being overbearing and make other people feel like they're being bulldozed. So that's why the strategy here is to inform. As long as they let people know what they're planning to do, then that gives those people the information they need to feel less overwhelmed or overtaken by the manifestor. So the signature for the manifestor is peace. So when a manifestor is operating correctly, they're following their strategy and authority, they're going to feel peace. And when they're operating from conditioning or not self, they're going to feel anger. So manifestors, again, they don't have that consistent access to the sacral center, that life force energy. So it's really going to be important that the manifestor is doing the things that are correct for them. If they try to do things that are not correct for them, then they're going to feel burnt out because they're not going to have the energy to complete it. And if they're not informing other people, then they're going to come up with a lot of resistance, and it's going to make things feel harder than they need to. Now, the next type is the projector. About 20% of the population are projectors, and they are here to be the guides. So projector is someone that does not have the sacral center defined, so they don't have the life force energy, and they also don't have the throat connected to the motor. Now, the projectors are the most varied type. So there are the most variations of projectors, and they're all very different. But the one thing that is the same is that there's no access to that life force energy that in that sacral center. Okay, so there are some projectors who do have one of the four motors, but it wouldn't have that direct connection to the throat. And like I said, the energy wants to flow from all of the centers towards the throat. So when there isn't that direct connection, that channel that's defined that goes directly to the throat from that energy center, then that person is likely to have some challenge in actually expressing the energy from that, even that energy center. And so that is why they need to wait to be acknowledged and invited. If you're a projector, that is the strategy here. So it's another wait strategy like the generator, but the generator is waiting to respond. So they may have opportunities that come up, or they may start to see some signs from the universe. Like maybe they're gonna like see repeating numbers or billboards about something they've been considering, kind of get that sign that helps them to know that it is the right direction for them. A projector needs to wait for other people to acknowledge them. So, and when you are operating within that strategy and your authority, and we'll, like I said, we're going to talk about that next, but then your signature is success. So you know that you're successfully following your strategy and authority when you feel successful. And the not self theme is bitterness. So if you're trying to initiate, if you're not waiting until someone acknowledges you and invites you to be their guide, you're going to feel bitter. And if you're a projector, I'm sure you can relate to this, where you just know exactly what someone should do, or you have this amazing advice that you know would help them with whatever they're dealing with, and you offer it, and they want nothing to do with it or what you're saying, and you're coming up against a lot of resistance, and you don't feel appreciated for what you're doing, and you're trying to help and you're really wanting to help people, but the people that you want to help just aren't receptive to you, and that's because you didn't wait to be acknowledged and invited. Now, when it comes to being a projector, I'm a projector. I'm a splenic projector. And this one at first can feel really challenging to wait. So one thing it's important to know about projectors is we don't have that life force energy. We can't move quick and initiate like manifestors. And things tend to just take longer when you're a projector because you have to wait. And what's really key is learning to follow your strategy and authority. So unfortunately, when you are operating from not self and you're not following your strategy and authority, then you're not sending out the right vibration to be acknowledged. People are not going to acknowledge you when you're operating from not self. That acknowledgement only comes when you're living your strategy and authority. So that's why it's really important to start here with strategy and authority, so that you are being that lighthouse. You're shining your light. And when you are in alignment with your design, then your light is going to be magnetic, and the correct people are going to see you and acknowledge you. And again, it's not letting the mind try to dictate how you get noticed. That's operating from not self, and that will not lead to the invitations that you want, and that's going to keep you stuck in bitterness. So pay attention, if you're a projector, to what makes you feel successful and what makes you feel bitter. And it's really important that you learn to follow your strategy and authority. So the last of the 4 types are the reflectors. And reflectors are rare. It's only about 1% of the population. And they're also referred to as the evaluators. So a reflector is someone that has none of the 9 centers defined. All 9 centers in their chart are going to be undefined. And so they're going to pick up a lot on the energy of the people around them, the environments they're in. And the strategy here for the reflector is to wait a moon cycle, or 28 days. And I definitely feel like the strategy to wait and be acknowledged and invited as a projector is difficult. And I can only imagine that having to wait to make important decisions 28 days has got to feel even more challenging. So reflectors, it's really important that you're in the right environment, that you wait those 4 weeks to really feel what it feels like throughout that whole moon cycle. So what ends up happening is each of the 64 gates get activated as that moon cycles around the earth. And so you'll really get to feel what it feels like. So reflectors are not here to understand themselves or understand other people, but they're here to understand the system and how it works. So in order to do that, they need to feel what it feels like as each of those gates is activated before they make important decisions. The signature for a reflector is surprise, and the not self theme is disappointment. So if you are making decisions without waiting that full moon cycle, or if you're doing things that aren't correct for you, being around people who aren't correct for you to be around, you're going to pick up on all of that energy and you're going to feel disappointment. So if you are listening to this and you are a reflector, definitely reach out to me. I would love to help you to understand this and dig into this more deeply, because you are definitely of the rare type. Okay, why did my slide not want to go? Okay, so I know this video is definitely getting longer than I wanted, and hopefully you're finding this helpful and not too overwhelming. And I promise we are getting close to the end. So if you're still with me, stick with me just a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to go quickly through these. These are the 7 authorities. And again, these have to do with the definition that you have in your chart, and there is a hierarchy. So the first one I want to mention is emotional. So anyone who has a solar plexus center defined will be emotional. And it's about, like I said before, 51% of the population has the solar plexus defined. So for emotional authority, there is no truth in the now. It's really important for you to learn to wait out that emotional wave for clarity. So it's kind of similar to the reflector, where I talked about they needed to feel what it felt like as each of the 64 gates was activated. For you, you need to feel that whole emotional wave. You need to feel the high and the low and everything in between to really get that clarity and feel what feels best for you and most supportive. So you probably have felt like people really wanted you to make instant decisions. And unfortunately, with this authority, um, it's really unlikely you're going to make the correct decision from that place of trying to decide in the now. So you're going to want to wait, probably overnight. It may take 2 days, it may take 2 weeks. It's hard to say, but for you to really feel that whole emotional wave. And the more you learn to do this, the more you practice it and lean into it, the easier it will be for you to gain that clarity. So hopefully that makes sense to you. The next one is the sacral authority. So sacral authority means that you have the sacral center, but you do not have the solar plexus. So if you have a sacral center and you're a generator, but you have the emotional, you will be an emotional generator or manifesting generator. So to have the sacral authority, you have to not have that emotional center, that solar plexus defined. When you have the sacral authority, it's all about that guttural response. And so you're gonna want to ask yourself yes or no questions, or find someone that you trust who you feel confident won't try to force you into not self or conditioning, who can ask you yes or no questions, and then you can listen for what your body says. That guttural mm-hmm or or for I don't know. And as a child, you were probably conditioned out of using these guttural sounds. You were probably told to use your words, say yes or no, because that's proper English, proper grammar. So you were likely conditioned out of using your authority, your way of knowing if something's correct for you or not. So it may take some time for you to reconnect with this authority because you've been conditioned out of using it. So really work on those yes or no questions as you're making decisions. So one of the advantages to this one is it is an instant knowing. As long as you're taking the time to stop and ask the question, you can know in the now if something's correct for you or not by listening to that guttural response. The next authority is splenic. So if you do not have the solar plexus and you do not have the sacral center, but you have the spleen defined, then you know that your authority is splenic. And this is also an instant knowing. So it's that intuition, it's that survival instinct, and there's only truth in the now. So the challenge to this one is that it's a very subtle message. It's, the mind is definitely much louder than the spleen. The emotions are much louder than the spleen. So it really is going to take you getting still and getting quiet to really learn to listen for the spleen. Now, this is that survival instinct. So if there is a bear that's chasing you and you kind of get that gut knowing that there's danger, you're only going to get this splenic authority once, because if you don't listen to it and you don't run, then you're going to die. So, and this is going to tell you like what is healthy for you or not healthy for you. So a real life example of this, because I know most of us aren't going to be chased by a bear, let's say that you're going to walk into a movie theater and you're just going to get this instant knowing that, this just doesn't feel right to me. And oftentimes our logic, our mind is going to talk us out of listening to that, right? It doesn't make sense. Oh, it's just a movie. And you never know what's going to happen. Like maybe you're going to sit down and someone you're sitting next to is sick, and you're going to end up sick because you sat there in the theater. Whereas if you listen to that message and you didn't go, and it's not saying that that movie theater is never going to be correct for you. It only knows in the now. It can't tell you 10 minutes from now or tomorrow or next week. So if you have this splenic authority, it's going to be important for you to give yourself the opportunity to make decisions in the now. It's going to be really challenging for you to plan out a week ahead to know if you're going to have the energy or if it's going to feel correct for you when that time comes. All right, so there are 4 more, and these are definitely more rare. Most people are going to fall within those first 3 that we talked about. So the next one, though, is the ego or the heart authority. So either the heart is going to be connected to the throat, or the heart's going to be connected to the G center. And like I said, you're not going to have the sacral, the emotional, the solar plexus, or the spleen, but you're going to have heart connected to the throat or heart connected to the G center. So if your heart is connected to the throat, then you're going to want to learn to listen to what you say. So they call this like soundboarding. You're going to need to speak out as you make decisions what's coming up for you. And it's not like you're going to speak it to get a soundboard to get somebody else's opinion or advice, but just so you can hear how it sounds. And that's when you're going to know. When you hear yourself saying it and you feel how that feels in your body, that's how you're going to know something's going to be correct. So, and then the heart center to the G center. So this one is going to be really important that you learn to be selfish and ask, what do I want? So you're really going to feel like, is this moving me in the right direction? Is this, who I want to be and who I want to become? Does this making this decision help me to get on that right path that feels correct for me? The next is the self or G center authority. And this one is similar, where you're going to need that sounding board and you're going to need to ask yourself, will this make me happy? And then the next one is the environmental authority. This one also is referred to sometimes as the mental authority. So this one, you're going to have no definition below the throat. So you could have the ajna to the throat, or you could have both head and ajna connected to the throat. And that makes you a mental authority or an environmental authority. And in this case, it's going to be really important that you're asking yourself, is this environment correct for me? Because if you're not in the correct environment, then it's really likely that what you're thinking, what you're feeling is going to be tainted by conditioning. Okay. But if you're not in the right environment, then you're likely to be conditioned and you're likely not to make decisions that are correct for you. So you only want to try to make decisions when you feel like you're in that right environment, so you can really come from that place. And again, it's going to be really helpful for you to speak things out because you do have that throat definition and you can feel how it feels in your body as you speak things out. And then the last one is the reflector authority. So all reflectors that have no centers defined are going to have that moon or lunar cycle authority. So they need to learn to slow down, not to rush, to contemplate and discuss for at least one lunar cycle so you can really feel how that decision feels before you make it. And if you aren't able to make that decision in 28 days, then you're going to need to take another cycle. All right, so I just threw a whole bunch of information at you. So how do you use this information that you now have? So you have access to mybodygraph.com. Again, you're going to want to start by reading your strategy and authority. You're going to look at the not self themes for each of your undefined centers in your chart. And you're going to start to experiment with your authority. and how it speaks to you, how that feels in your body, um, and whether you're able to have that instant knowing, or you need the yes or no question, or if you need to wait out that emotional wave, or you need to wait for the 28 days. So really start to become aware of decisions you're making and take the time to experiment with using your authority to help you make those decisions, and pay attention to when you're feeling your signature emotions and when you're feeling your not self emotions, because again, those are the indicators of when you're allowing conditioning to influence what you're doing and when you're saying yes to things you should not say yes to. And notice when your mind is trying to be in control. This is important for um, all of the strategy and authorities, all of the authorities. So none of us have an authority where our mind is going to help us make correct decisions. It's really important to connect with who we are and use that, using your strategy to and feeling into what feels correct for you based on what your unique authority is. So I just want to kind of go through my design really quickly. Hopefully, maybe this will help some of it to make a little more sense in relation to a real person, since I can't yet see your chart to walk through yours. So this is my chart. This is my design. Like I said, I'm a splenic projector. I don't have the solar plexus, and you'll actually see that my solar plexus is completely open. So definitely sometimes it's challenging for me to relate with um, how to explain an emotional authority and how that would work, because I don't have any of those gates or any frame of reference for processing emotional authority. But I definitely do pick up on the energy of other people's emotions. And one of the things I've realized, especially since learning about human design, is I often actually feel other people's emotions, and not even at the same level they do. Like I said, when you have that openness, it amplifies it and reflects it back to the person. Um, so yeah, that is definitely can be one of my challenges, but also can be one of my greatest areas of insight and wisdom and understanding other people because of my openness there. I also have the open head and ajna. So on my own, I definitely have a hard time making sure that I'm focusing on the things that really matter because of that openness. I do pick up on the energy of other people's thoughts and ideas. I often get intuitive um, ideas, concepts, and inspiration for other people because I have this openness, especially if it's someone that I've worked with one-on-one. That's often like when I'm in the shower and I get the great intuitive hits, it's usually ideas for other people that comes through when I'm in that really connected place. I also have the heart center that is open. So again, that's the ego, that's the willpower, um, that's that sense of self-worth and self-esteem. So that's definitely been a theme that I've struggled with a lot in my life, is self-esteem, being able to charge what I'm worth, especially when it's doing work that I love to do, that just feels fun, that doesn't feel hard. I've struggled with only being able to make good money doing things I don't want to do. And there are definitely times when I just don't have that willpower. You know, maybe that could come with sticking to an exercise workout routine, or sticking to the diet I know is best supportive of all of this, you know, and all of these other things when it comes to willpower. It's something that I definitely struggle with as well. And then the sacral center, I do not have that defined. I do not have consistent access to energy. Um, Getting burnt out is something I've struggled with a lot in my life, and knowing, you know, when to stop pushing. And I often keep working long after I should, and then start to feel really tired. And then maybe it'll take me a week to recover because I've pushed myself for too long, um, too long each day for too many days or too many weeks, and struggle with energy, especially when I'm doing things that aren't correct for me. And then I also have the open root center. So I definitely feel that pressure that I need to do. And it's easy for me to feel like I need to be doing more. It's really challenging to let yourself just be still and trusting that, without pushing, the money's going to come, or, everything's going to get done. But the truth is, when you're operating from that strategy and authority, you're only saying things that, um, your authority are telling you are correct for you, then you're going to have the energy you need. Things are going to get done more easily, with less effort, and things just are going to fall into place. The right people are going to come in at the right time. And when I operate from that place of trying to push too hard, trying to do things I don't have the energy for, trying to figure it out and make the big plan and stick to the logical reasons for things to happen, that's when I meet a lot of resistance and things are really hard and challenging. I just get overwhelmed and overtired and burnt out. The ones that I do have defined, I have the throat, I have the G center, and the spleen. Um, and definitely, for me, like the channels that I have to do with being the guide for people. I have those projected um, channels, and I don't want to go too far into this but this is definitely something. If you feel interested in understanding your channels, this is something that we could definitely do to go deeper to help you to understand yourself. I've actually created this amazing access database that will help me get your custom information about your centers and your channels almost instantly. Like, I'm so super excited about this. This was definitely something that, like, I worked on for about a week straight. I couldn't sleep because I just was so excited about getting it done. My husband was not my biggest fan as I was working on this, because it's really all that I wanted to do and all I wanted to think about. But yes, I'm excited to share that with you when you feel ready to go deeper and want to understand more. And I'm doing my best to keep it where I'm using language and words that make sense and don't feel too far out there. And so, yeah. All right. So, what is next? You are invited. So, whether you are a projector and you need the invitation, or you're a generator and you want an opportunity to respond to, this is an opportunity where I'm inviting you to go deeper into your human design so that you can really understand who you are, what you're meant to do, what your purpose is, what your strengths are, where you've been conditioned to do things that aren't correct for you, that are draining your energy, that are making you feel frustrated or bitter or angry. And and so I really want to help you to learn to live correctly, so you can create the life that you're meant to have, so you can experience that success and satisfaction and peace and just happiness and all of those good things, and have the right people come into your life at the right time. Know who's correct for you, know what opportunities are correct for you, and really just learn to manifest your dream life. And I'm definitely um, excited to help moms with this, because I think it's so easy for us to get lost in our roles as a mom and always put everyone else's needs first. And the truth is, when you are living from this place of really understanding yourself and managing your energy the way that you're designed to manage your energy, and you really learn how to have better relationships because you understand yourself and you can understand other people, and you can accept yourself for who you are, and you can accept other people for who they are, then things just fall into place and you have more to offer to everyone in your life. And when you're coming from that place of being really frustrated or being really bitter and not having the energy and letting yourself letting your health suffer because you're doing things that you don't have the energy for. Um, Learning about your human design not only does it make you happier and more fulfilled, but it also helps you to have more to offer to everybody else. So I'm inviting you to join us on Facebook. I have a Facebook group that is MYD, which is Manifest Your Dream Life Moms. So MYD Life Moms. If you just type in on Facebook, type in MYD Life Moms, you should see the group come up, and you can request to join. I would love to have you join us there. In that group, I'm going to be talking a lot more about human design. We'll talk about each of the centers and what it means to have your center defined or undefined, and what to watch for. We can start to talk about channels. We can start to talk about the gates and what those themes are. And we can also even talk about relationships. So there's so much more that we can go into as you dig deeper. But what I want to ask you to do is use this as an opportunity to test your strategy and authority, and mostly your authority. So if you're an emotional authority person, then I don't want you to make the decision now. I want you to sit with it for a day or two and really feel into, does this opportunity feel correct for me? Does this feel like something that I really want to do? And let yourself spend a couple of days thinking that this opportunity is not getting pulled away. You don't have to decide right now. Um, this is something that I'm going to continue to do, and I'm going to be sharing in this group ways that you can learn to understand your design even deeper. And if you are a sacral authority, then I just want you to stop and check in. Does this joining this group feel correct for you? Would you like to go deeper with your human design? Would you like to connect with other moms who are learning to live their design, who are learning to let go of conditioning and operate from their authentic self in alignment with who they are and who they're meant to be and how they're meant to be in the world? And just feel for that sacral guttural response. And if you're a sacral um, authority, then just let yourself tune in to how you feel, and you will know it will, if it feels correct for you. It'll often, I mean, everyone's different when they're sacral, and it depends on where your sacral is joined to, what your sacral is joined to, um, which center, and might look a little bit different. For some people, it's kind of, they say it's a taste. It could just be a knowing, it could be an excitement. So really just feel in. Does it feel like this is correct for you? And what is your body telling you? And if you are one of the um, other authorities, obviously if you're a reflector and you want to decide next month and see if it feels correct for you, then come back in a month. And if you're one of the other authorities that needs a sounding board and you don't know who to talk to, then reach out to me. I would definitely love to have a conversation with you. And if it's something that you determine isn't correct for you right now, like, I won't be offended. I won't take it personally. But if you just want to practice having that sounding board, just know that you can reach out to me at any time. And so you can request to join the group, or you can also send me a private message and feel into what might be the right way for you to move forward with your human design and understanding yourself. And I'm excited to connect with those of you that feel like this is the right next step for you. So I want to thank you for watching all of this, for sticking with me all the way to the end, and I am sending you so much love.